Welcome to episode 21. Today, myself, Kausa, we're gonna talk about AI and machine learning, and with the boom of both of them in the recent couple years, we also will be safe to say that machine learning engineers will be on demand. And today, I have a friend of mine that I invited so we can talk more about it and get more insights about machine learning and how it ties up with AI. Hello, guys.
What's going
How
on?
you guys going? This is Levi.
Yeah. Hey guys. Good to be on
Hey,
here.
man. What's going on? What's going on? Big welcome to Levi, who's joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Kind of first time for me on the podcast, so we'll see how this goes.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be. We're gonna have like three different sections. First, we want to start to getting to know you. Basically, probably we can talk about how we actually meet, which probably be like probably
Yeah.
interesting. I guess.
Yeah.
Leva and I, we both play tennis, and when one night we sort of have this tournament which is like goes every week. It's not a tournament each, but you can just join. And yeah, so we had a match, and after the match, I sort of said to Levi, "Oh, like, where do you live?" And he said, "Oh, I live in this suburb." And I said, "Oh, me too." And we
Wait,
just
who
decided,
won?
that's it, Levi.
Is that why
Very-
you're asking where he lived? You're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
find you.
no wonder why that was sort of just skipped day. Like,
It just means a
You
bit
know,
of
we
the
played
information.
on.
yeah.
No, but it was a good match, definitely. And I actually asked Levi to. It was you that asked me for my number so we can play it later, because it's one of those matches where normally you play with against someone and you don't actually enjoy the match. But this was a good match, and we said like, oh, be fun to play again sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always like when you play, if you don't play well, it's usually because of the person that you're playing. It's like their styles just don't match up well, and so you don't enjoy playing. But Nick and I, we had like these kind of similar styles where we like these long rallies. So it was
Yeah.
more, I think, you just get into the zen mode of hitting these shots. And so Nick's a great like, I think he grew up playing on clay, so he has these like great clay strokes which just go on forever. So it's a lot of fun.
There you
And that's
go.
pretty
Yeah.
interesting because since knowing Nick, he doesn't lose very often. So you must be pretty good, Levi.
I got lucky that night. I got lucky.
No, like I think it's one of those matches. Like basically, every time that I play against someone that beats me, I want to play. I gotta want to get better, because when I win a match like 6-1 or 6-love, I think like, oh, that wasn't that good. Like I was playing okay. I
You
put
didn't
myself.
test yourself.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, every single match that I lose, I say like, I want to get better.
Yeah.
Oh well, at least that was an interesting way of meeting. It's sort of like a social tennis tournament, and I guess bettering yourselves. You guys wanted to play each other, and here we are. Here we are now on the podcast.
On a
Yeah.
podcast.
Didn't think this was gonna be the outcome. Maybe he's gonna throw some questions my way now that are just really difficult, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, that's for hitting that shot on the corner."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
One love.
Like that wasn't in the script, mate.
Cool.
That's cool. All right.
Yeah. So how, like, now the question is, how do you end up coming to Australia? Because as you might realize, Levi doesn't have Australian accent. So
Not yet. I'm trying. But yeah, it's a pretty wild story. No, I mean not that wild, but kind of interesting, I suppose. So I had this dream of basically going to all the big four tennis tournaments in the world. So there's like the U.S. Open, there's the French Open, there's Wimbledon, and then Australian Open here. And so I was like, I want to go to the French Open. And so I decided to kind of book this trip, some with friends, but then like they didn't really have an interest in tennis. So the back half of the trip, I went to kind of Paris by myself. But in between, I was like, I have some time. Let me go to this like winery because I just really didn't know what to do with myself. So I went on this winery tour, and it was actually in Italy. They're pretty close to the French border there. But I ended up meeting this person who worked at Tennis Australia, and we just started hitting it off in terms of conversation. And I was like, "Oh, it's so cool that you work there." And she was like, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I work in machine learning." And she's like, "Actually, there's this guy there that I think you should meet at Tennis Australia. I'll give him your number." So at this point, I'm living in the US, I'm living in Portland. I get this random phone number while I'm traveling, having a little vacation. I come back to the States and I just send off this email basically. And I was like, "Hey, I met one of your colleagues," and she was like on the social media team. She didn't even work in tech.
Yeah.
And then honestly, it was like a year and a half later, I ended up getting the job over here. It was a long visa process and stuff like that. But
Yep.
kind of just coincidental.
Yeah.
Really couldn't have planned being here, but it was always a dream to kind of work in tennis and ML.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
That's such a cool coincidence, I guess. Like it's tied up to
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you was like the hobby that, because tennis is a hobby that most people start really young. So you say like, oh, I wanna, like I wanna see the tournaments, I wanna see that, and then you end up going to one of the tournaments and also working in that place. So
Yeah, I like that coincidence. I just that it all kind of worked
Linked
out, I
up.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times, like these kind of stories, they don't really work out. But for your case, it sort of worked out where you actually came and you went to go watch your passion, and then it linked up for you to coming to Australia. So
Yeah,
that's cool, man.
yeah, and also one
yeah,
thing funny that I want to sort of bring out, it's like you will think like there's more opportunities in general for a machine learning engineer in the US than Australia, but at some point here there's a bit of passion too, because like you said, like okay, I know that there probably is more jobs in US, but there's also it's a exchange, like I can go somewhere else to see how it looks like and also ties up with your personal interest.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%. It was. I think it was a tough decision, and it wasn't always this fairy tale easy path. But yeah, it was really cool that things ended up working out, and I always wanted to live abroad, so that was a huge driver. And I think I told Nick that too, like, hey, one of the big reasons was that I wanted to go out and live somewhere else. I think the interesting thing about Australia is I always thought I would live in like Spain or something, and I'd have to learn a second language. And then it's like coming here to Australia, it's pretty much immigration on easy mode if you already know the language. So
Yeah.
I didn't have maybe the experience I thought I was going to have when I was
Hey,
younger,
never say never. If you need to learn Spanish, Nick's pretty good. So
Yeah.
I know. That's why I'm
There
putting
you
in the
go.
investment right now.
That's it.
Well,
that's it.
Levi said to me that he was a bit you did a bit basic Spanish, so it's like you already have a starting point.
Ooh, ooh. I might be getting exposed. I took 2 years. I took 2 years in college.
You see, like yeah.
Ooh,
But that
okay.
I didn't take anything before that, so I was starting at a pretty low level there.
Maybe exchange some Spanish lessons for some tennis lessons.
Oh, I see what you're doing there. And maybe I'll start charging you every time that you ask me for a Spanish word.
Being
Well,
in Australia, Levi, what's your favorite Australian sort of lingo word? Like, what's something that sort of
Oh,
just give us one word.
just like there's so many. Like Sparky, like
Sparky,
Sparky, for an electrician.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they shorten all the words, but then they just add the EY or like EI or Y at the end, and
Yeah, they rhyme it.
Yeah, you totally get it. It's like Sparky. Oh yeah, electrician. Like no one even had to tell me. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have described the Australian like slang as just lazy. Like we just don't want to say the whole word, so we just shorten it.
Yeah. I don't mind it.
What about foods? Like, what type of foods have you discovered or tried since you got here? Are you enjoying Vegemite
Ooh.
or?
Yeah, I might go down as like the only person who's never tried Vegemite here in Australia.
Oh,
Ah, come on, man! You got to do it.
I
Tastes
know
like
it's
like
never.
Nutella.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. Um, it's a commitment because I have to buy the whole jar, and I feel like I'm not
True.
going to buy the whole jar.
Yeah.
But they have some at work, so that's probably where I need to try it. But then I'd have to steal someone's bread, and it's just a moral dilemma at that point.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. It's a lot going on for such little, such a taste.
and
Yeah.
every time that someone asks me, "Have you tried Vegemite?" and I said, I always come back with a question: do you actually eat it? It's like,
I've heard it's good if you just put a little bit on. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm waiting to try it.
yeah.
It's
You
definitely
need
a
a
savory spread, as you would
Have
say.
you sampled the local meats like a kangaroo or anything like that?
I had a kangaroo burger.
Yep.
I don't know if there was a lot of sauce on it, so I don't know if I could really tell that big of a difference. It was pretty thin patty, so it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
But when I go to the grocery market, it's like, wow, that meat is so red. There's so much
Yeah.
iron in that kangaroo meat. It looks so red. I don't know. What do you guys think of kangaroo? Have you guys tried it?
Yeah, I have had a few kanga bangers in my time, and
Kanga
a few and a few
Um,
kangaroo steaks.
Yeah.
Pretty good. It's very lean. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you don't have a lot of like sauce on it as well, it does have like a distinct taste too. It's probably a bit more of an acquired taste, I would say.
Yeah,
Mm.
I'm actually a chef, Levi. So long story short, I used to work in a steakhouse in the city, and we used to sell kangaroo loins, which is it's like a lamb loin or like a strip loin,
Yeah.
or a knife fillet for beef. And every time we used to get Navy ships from America, we'd get so busy because they'd all want to be trying kangaroo. So, yeah, it is a very gamey meat, and that's why it's really red in color. And there's a lot of muscle in
Yeah.
kangaroo as well, and I'm sure you would find that in horse meat and other meat. Not saying that you
Oh,
should eat
true.
that as well, but
Yeah.
and I think it's best served medium rare. Like you don't want to cook it anymore
Oh,
because it'll be so chewy. So that's
Mm.
why they
I
mince
see.
it and they make like burgers and sausages so that it's easier because it's like blitzed up.
I
Yeah, I
got
should
it.
Just a little
ask
side
you
note
that
there,
too.
fam. There you go. But yeah, the Navy ships that come to Brisbane, man, we get so many Navy boys coming to try kangaroo because it's like, oh, I want to try kangaroo.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's got to be an experience for them, I'm sure.
yeah. I think for anyone anyway, like it was pretty
Yeah.
popular.
Have you done much travel just around Australia, like rurally or anything like that?
I don't have a car, so I don't find myself that far out of the city most days.
Gotcha.
I went down to like Brighton Beach with this. So that's kind of showing how far I've been away. It's not very far. It's like an hour or so. So there and yeah, not too much. I went to Sydney when I first got here for work, but that was like a tennis thing. So again, I didn't see that much of Sydney. Planning on going skiing in New Zealand, probably
Okay.
more in the middle of winter. But
Nice.
yeah,
Oh, that'd be good.
like to see more of it.
The reason why I ask is because if you drive rurally, particularly the southern part of Australia where there's more wildlife around, a lot of people like see on the side of the road because kangaroos always, for some reason, jump in front of cars and things like that, and the same with wombats. So it's like a national animal, and like there's like just hundreds on the side of the road that are just slaughtered by jumping in front of vehicles.
Oh,
Sometimes those kangaroos damage your vehicle instead of itself.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
yeah.
But,
I mean, they're
yeah.
hefty.
Yeah, if you don't have a car, I mean, I'm just finding all these angles for you. You could always, give Nick a few tennis lessons, and he can like take you first.
Again, that's two in a row.
Yeah, I don't know if you picked up, but like, is the other thing about coming to Australia is the humor is a bit sarcastic, and yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of banter I found at work. So there was always this exchange that's going on. which I
Yeah.
enjoy. I'm getting better at it, but yeah,
That's good.
it's
Yeah.
definitely something you notice.
It takes some time. Like I remember because Nowakis and I we used to work together when I was in Brisbane. So we used to like have a lot of that, and I couldn't pick up if it was just being friendly or I should just probably laugh. I don't know. Like it was because
Mm,
like in a way sometimes when you are at work you don't want to be that like such a dickhead and sometimes not say the
Easily
right thing.
offended. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
probably
You probably
just
acquired some
hearing your
thick skin.
Oh, okay.
they're, they're pretty nice there. But yeah, no, there's always like these little jests that go back and forth. Oh, you did this. Well, did you do this? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you
good.
get into it's pretty funny, and you just have a good laugh by the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try to think of an instance where that happened. I'll bring it up like 40 minutes later.
That's
Well, that sort of covers the first section. And on the next session, we wanted to start more of related of machine learning itself and explain what the fuck is actually a machine learning engineer in general, in a few words. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't define the whole subset of people, but for me, what it is it's like someone who takes a machine learning model and then productionalizes it, meaning that if you have a model on your computer, let's say you had a data set, you did some training, you're going to output some sort of model file, right? But how do you get people to actually use that? Maybe it's a really powerful model. Maybe it takes a long time to get the inference from. So you make a request on a web page. How quick is it going to come back? All those things are pretty necessary to have a good user experience. So the ML engineer would come in and have more of an understanding of how do you set that up on the cloud, so something like AWS, and then how do you allow users to access it? So usually like an API call or something like that, where a request is going out and saying, here's my data. What should my recommendation be, or whatever the model is. So it's kind of that portion, that middle ground,
Mm-hmm.
to get the model out there.
Is machine learning like in modules always hosted on the cloud? Is that pretty regular or standard?
Well, yeah, it kind of depends. So they have these things called edge deployments. I'll say actually first, yes, it is standard to host your models in the cloud. But with the complexities of some of these models, the inference that you would need is going to take way too long. Like, let's say you need to comb over a video or something like that, and you're doing all these processes, and you need to send every image up to the cloud. Well, that's going to take a long time, especially if you're running on like 3G or something like that. So
Yeah.
they do these things called edge deployments. So you actually deploy the model to the edge, which could be like your cell phone. And so then your cell phone's actually running the model, and then it speeds up that process, because like instead of sending the image all the way up, which is, could be like megabytes, you're sending just the little amounts of data up back to the cloud saying this was the response of the model. And so then they might save it up there or do something like send you back another, like a list of products, right? That you're recommended based on the image that you took or something like that. So there's like different styles of deployments, but mostly I think it's on the cloud probably.
Yep.
But yeah, like one interesting example would be Swing Vision, which is this tennis app that basically you take a recording of your session, and then it processes it, and it will give you like statistics around your game. And so that's a good example of where it's too much video to process up to the cloud.
So it
So
just
they do the
sends
processing locally. Yeah.
okay. So depends on your phone, will have a better performance sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can imagine like, go ahead.
Oh, we were actually talking about this as well. The quality of the image would also dictate like how much data as well. Like if you're shooting in 4K, you can't like uploading that would just slow things down heaps. So, but the results would be better in a higher quality footage, right?
Yeah, so you basically want to slim down the resolution to whatever your model can still perform with. So if let's say you have 99% accuracy in 4K, but in like 1080p you have 98, you're going to drop it down to 98 because it's a lot cheaper to drop it down and save all that data transfer. So, and it'll be much faster too. But usually it's like, I don't know, some of the models I was working with, it's like 640 by 640. So it's a really pixelated image that you're actually doing the modeling on.
But it's
at the end of the day, the computer's not really looking at how beautiful the image looks. It's just trying to find a point of difference.
Yeah. So it's like whatever works, whatever threshold works for the resolution, you can end up using.
Yeah. And what ended up diving you into machine learning anyways? Like how this whole journey started? Because I think it's not a typical job that I said, like a Sparky. Like you said, oh, well, my family is probably a Sparky, and I don't know, I probably should study that, or like something that it's transferable within the family and friends and stuff. But your sort of job is a new one that is coming up in the recent years. So how did it start for you?
Yeah. So I studied economics in grad school. And so my path was like I did quite a bit of math in undergrad. And then I went on to get a master's in economics. And so we did a lot of modeling there where we were trying to predict like if you're this gender, this age, or this height, whatever, what's your socioeconomic status going to be in the future? Or what's the prediction there? Or if you increase this level of some attribute in a country, what's going to be the global effect on health standards? And so it's a bunch of statistics where you're basically trying to tease out an effect of some action. And so that kind of got me into the modeling bit, and I always really enjoyed that aspect of kind of creating a equation that represents the real world. And so, that's kind of where it started. And then I got a job at this consulting company called Slalom in the US. And from there, it was just kind of a self-driven passion to get more into machine learning and trying to implement those types of solutions at a client. And then, I was like 5 years doing that and kind of made a little niche for myself there doing that type of work. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then I landed a job here at Tennis Australia, kind of doing the same type of work. So it's a kind of weird, I mean, unusual path maybe, but I'm not sure anyone's path to their job these days is usual.
Exactly, bro. So you have to be pretty good at maths to do what you do, essentially what you're saying, or?
I think it helps. I think it definitely helps. So the people that create these models, definitely. I mean, there's like PhD math students, and then they go on and they create these great models, and they really have a deep understanding of like the most optimal way to do these types of methods. For someone like me, it was helpful in understanding, okay, this is generally how these algorithms are working, but my day-to-day isn't probably, it's not spent creating new algorithms for classification. It's more like these exist. How do we productionalize them? How do we use them? How do we put them on the cloud? So it's more probably closer akin to like a back-end or like back-end engineer, really, where you're dealing with models as opposed to something else.
Yeah.
Do you use a lot of programming in your role?
Yeah. So it's mostly Python. So we do different types of like Python apps and development, and then there's a lot of services that you have to spin up on AWS to get these systems working. So there's different ways that you can do that, but they actually have this cool thing that I don't know if so many people would be across, but it's like you could use this language that they have to basically instantiate all of the cloud resources that you need to put a solution together. So you could think of, I don't know, a company like Snapchat or Twitter or something. They probably have a template of like, here are all the resources that we want to instantiate for our product to work. And imagine how valuable that is. You could take that script and just say like, oh, here are all the resources I need to make the product. And so that can be, I don't know, I think that's pretty crazy that they can do that
Mm.
these days.
Yeah.
That's sort of crazy. Like kind of like what you said. It's like you don't have to bend the wheel to actually deploy solutions like that anymore. Because like you're saying, like the algorithms, it's already there, and you can work with them, make it better sometimes if it's possible, if it's that part of the job. And I think the more with the boom of AI and the boom of machine learning, all these solutions, like probably the beginning, we thought that they were just gonna be deployed on the tech industry, but at some point we've seen like every single company now is at some point like revisiting and seeing if it's possible to make things better than before. So yeah, it's just a good point. And also I wanted to ask you, like, what sort of apps on your daily basis you use? And with apps I mean everything, like Teams, Slack, those sort of things. What sort of things you use as a machine learning engineer?
Yeah, my biggest one would be what's called like an IDE. It's just like an environment to code in, right? So I use VS Code. So VS Code allows me to do all my scripting and run and see, okay, is this application working? I use a lot of Docker. So Docker is not really, it's an app, but it basically containerizes your environment so you can put it to the cloud. And have pretty good confidence that it's going to run up there too. So those are two big ones. Slack, my go-to kind of communication app. I really am not a big fan of Teams or most Microsoft products. I mean, VS Code's Microsoft, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of how they do things. But yeah, you always end up using Teams, I feel like. I do use ChatGPT quite a bit. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna miss that boat, or I'm not too proud to say that I don't use
Yeah.
it. I use it. It's a
Hey,
great
man.
tool.
Loud and proud, bro.
Yeah.
So I think everyone can say that, AI or ChatGPT or like all the different variations of it definitely help everyone. And it's just the convenience of it and what it can do. And I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot of language modules and stuff going into it, and machine learning in ChatGPT as well. That's another crazy area as well.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask as well, with ChatGPT specifically, do you use it like you put in perhaps your pseudocode and then it helps you write your code, or how exactly do you use it? Do you use it for inspiration or?
Hmm. I think all sorts, really. A lot of what I'll do is I'll say, okay, here's my code. What's wrong with it? Like, not what's wrong with it, but I'll say, like, where could I improve it? So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
instead of having to ask someone to review my code, I say, like,
Yeah.
what's in this code that could be better? And then a lot of times I'll be like, okay, yeah, I could add more doc strings. You know, I could put more comments in, but
Yeah.
I look for the big things like, oh, this could break if this type of parameter comes in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Ah.
I like it to validate my code.
Mhm.
I definitely would use it to, like, if there's kind of standard things that sometimes you have to do in like the coding world, and the syntax is like, you probably should have this memorized by now.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a long, like, it's a long thing that you always have to do kind of ad hoc. Sometimes
Yeah.
I know ChatGPT can just produce that type of code. So I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, write
Yeah.
this thing where it reads this file and it outputs it like this. And so
Yeah.
that, like, throwaway code that I won't use again, a lot of times I'll
Yeah.
use ChatGPT for.
Big
Mm.
time saver. So I had a question as well for you. So what areas is machine learning used that people might not suspect that it's being used, or where's something that you'd find machine learning that might be surprising for somebody who just doesn't know that it's being used in the background?
Yeah. There's so much. I mean, everything has like AI in it, I feel like, at some point.
Mm.
But like, one thing that I heard recently that I thought was surprising is, like, Spotify, the music company, is using
Yeah.
it basically when you search in your text field there. They're actually using like a large language model to then put out the list of songs based on how it matches. So you could start putting in things that they're not song titles, but they're like emotions and stuff. I think they're
Yeah.
actually going to create their own Like there'll be this own
Search
search
engine.
prompt, but it's like,
Yeah,
you basically you say like, oh, I want something that's somber and quiet and
And it
like
will create
has
a
good
playlist for you.
lyrics. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they'll create a
Yeah.
playlist for you. It's pretty wild.
we actually were talking about this the other day, but YouTube's search engine is probably one of the most powerful ones, and like you can like input like just even like the words or like one or two words, and it'll come up with like the song that you might be like, you know, when you know a song but you don't know the
Ah,
words,
yeah.
and you just put in
So,
something
yeah.
random, and you're like
Yeah.
trying to find it, and you're like, maybe that's something that you could possibly do on Spotify
Or something that you remember from the video. Let's say like
Yeah.
a Hawaiian
Yeah.
shirt play in front of the big stage, and then you put in that, and it will show you something like probably while you were looking.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Spotify.
We were talking about as well about Netflix and their machine learning algorithm, because sometimes it tries to push certain like movies your way that it thinks you'll like. And one guy did this example, like it was trying to push Legally Blonde his way, and he would type something completely different, and like the first result would be like Legally Blonde, and he's like, I don't even want to watch this movie.
Yeah, and that's a funny use case because like I think how they do it is basically like, let's say your friend, there's someone else that matches him exactly, like they have the same taste preference, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that person recently just watched Legally Blonde, and so then Netflix is
Ah.
like, oh, given that they're the same type of person, they have the same taste, I bet he would
Like,
also like
take that.
Legally Blonde too. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's,
Yeah,
maybe
but
he
then
should watch it. Maybe he would.
Yeah.
like it.
Maybe he'd like it. Yeah.
it could have been like it was his wife, but when they're watching Netflix, obviously the model doesn't understand that that's not him.
Yeah.
So you could be like,
yeah, that's
like
so
it could
true.
be something like, I mean, the amount of times you watch Netflix on someone else's TV or your partner's TV or your friend's TV, and it's obviously it's not you,
Yeah.
but
Even your
the
family.
data is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Very
girlfriend
well.
uses my account all the time, and whenever there's like some sort of drama or something being recommended, I'm like, yep, that was Shay.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's just this bit of ML where it can go wrong, right? It's not working as intended. And I think there's some pretty big consequences for when that happens. And like you have to be careful. I think there's this example, how is it, Amazon? Basically a daughter had like ordered something related to a baby, like because she was having a baby, but her dad didn't know. And then it like on his account it recommended like all these baby products, and he found out that like his daughter was having a baby, and it created this huge drama, and she was just trying to order, you know, like one product secretly.
Yeah.
And so it's like unintended consequences of using ML at scale, and most of it's good, but there are these edge cases where it could be a bad outcome.
That dinner could have been very hectic.
Yeah. She should have just cleared her search history or something, man.
That's the thing. You know, they could still get into the model. It's like, I don't know if you tried to like let YouTube Shorts or whatever. If you get into a certain algorithm, even if you clear your history on YouTube, you still get the same recommendations. Like I think
there you go. That's a good point that you stumbled on there unintentionally. Like you can't clear your online profile just by clearing your history. You know, it's already in the system.
Still there.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a meme on TikTok at the moment, and it's like, I am responsible for my For You page. And like when you get just like the most random things, like people are like, yep, I did that.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's so true. Like every time, like I have. Is it a trend where you like take a screenshot also of like all what it comes on your homepage on your search page on Instagram? Like normally people get random stuff. Like if you're into cars, like you will bring all these videos about cars. If you just watch girls, like show girls and stuff like that.
Have you been caught, Nick?
No,
Looking
at
cars, not girls, cars.
Come on, video.
Look at that exhaust pipe.
I think I'm committing seppuku, like that thing when you kill yourself.
you're like, I was looking at the car, not the girl on the bikini on the car. It was the car.
This algorithm, man.
It's like, yeah, take my phone. Goodbye. You told me.
Actually, Levi, do you know, is machine language responsible for, when phones are listening in, like, you might be talking to somebody about like a car, for example, or you might be talking about tennis, and then all of a sudden, when you're browsing through the internet, you find advertisements that are like placed around what you were talking about.
Audio prompting.
Yeah, I think it's probably just has to do with like what you have enabled on your phone. There's a lot that like these apps can have access to that you might not
Yeah.
realize. I think Apple's starting to do a better job. I don't have an Android, so I'm not sure on that front. But you can disable basically their permissions. But in the past, that wasn't always the case, right? You could just listen to so much of the content and then store those models. And so, like, let's say you're, I don't know, doing like, let's say you're doing some other app that has nothing to do with what like you currently are on your phone. It could still be listening and taking in the audio, or it could even take in other information about other apps. You always see that thing that pops up that's like, ask app not to track. And I think that's a little too gracious to the app. Like, ask? No, I don't need to ask the app to not do it. You just need to block it.
Phone, man.
Yeah. But yeah, they have a lot of access to data that you might not realize just coming out of your app.
Yeah. And a lot of the phones are always listening these days, like for you to say like, "Hey Siri" or "Okay Google."
Yeah.
Like,
Even I saw a video like I think not a long time ago. They were using like AI was using the Wi-Fi signal to actually map the place at the whole, let's say, whole building, and they could
I did see
actually
that.
locate people within the network. So because the signal, it spreads like a radio signal. I'm not quite sure the frequency and stuff, but what it does, it pinpoints location and metrics. And so they were using the example of the FBI, like just any agency that it could know how many people are in the room and stuff like that. How big is the room and stuff that you wouldn't think. Even the vacuum cleaners, like the robots, they're mapping your house. Like you're allowing your vacuum cleaner to map the house for free, but it's part of their job too. That's what they're doing. And they were saying like they could use that to sell you products that fit your place, for instance.
I bought a washing machine recently, and I was looking at some reviews, and one of the washing machines could hook up to your Wi-Fi, and then you could set it to start at certain times and things like that. But one person was like, I don't know what this washing machine is downloading, but it had like 5 gigs worth of downloads in a month, and he's like, it's something that was going to break the bank. I'm like, why is this downloading so much?
It's analyzing your washing lane.
It's like this guy uses white. This guy uses black shirts all the time.
But yeah, I was just gonna say my girlfriend, she's like really into just taking good care of her cats, and I was like, oh, I should get her a present. And they have these like automatic litter cleaners where it cleans the litter box, and they have all sorts of AI into that, like predicting when your cat's next gonna go to the bathroom, or what their weight cycle is gonna be in the next month. And I'm like, this is insane. This is crazy.
It'll be scanning the cat and be like, your cat's eating too much. You need to feed it.
And face recognition on the cat. This isn't the right cat. Don't let him in.
It's an imposter. You gotta.
That's hectic. I like that. So that's cool.
One of the questions that I also wanted to ask, like, wanted you to tell us a bit of kind of like solutions that you deployed over the last years, and the ones that you're probably more excited about to talk. We don't have to get too technical, but something that you really enjoy doing it.
Yeah. I think I have two. Would you guys want to hear a tennis one or a non-tennis one?
Whatever one you
Both.
you
Yeah.
enjoyed more. It's up to you.
Yeah.
All right, all right. I'll do the non-tennis one. So we did this kind of proof of concept that was pretty new, and it kind of touches on something that Nick and I had chatted on before, which was kind of how do you map an image or how do you create a 3D representation of something from like static images. And so what kind of solution that we were proposing was actually let's create a computer vision model that's actually based on fake data. So like generated data. So imagine, you're in a room with a person and you kind of take a video or a couple of photos of them in this room. And then from that image, you can actually generate hundreds of thousands of images and angles, right? You could essentially what the application did, it's from NVIDIA. It's called Instant NGP. It allowed you to recreate a 3D model based on that. And so you could, like, as if you were a probe, you can fly around the room that you've just taken pictures of. And it uses all this kind of light refraction technology to estimate the distances and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But what we did with that was it enabled us to take a couple images or strings of images, these videos, and then create this huge training set that we could build an algorithm off of.
Yeah.
And that might seem kind of trivial, like, okay, why would we do that? But with these like digital twins and stuff like that, you can think, let's say, like one of the problems we faced in one of these jobs that I worked at, we were trying to predict, okay, there's a ship out on the horizon. We want to identify whether or not where the ships are. It's just for navigational senses, right? But it could be like the weather has changed quite a bit. There's a lot of clouds. Can you still identify the ship? But your training data actually might just be on clear days. So you might not have this training data that actually accounts for the variation in weather. The idea is that given these digital twin environments where you can kind of scan things, you can actually start putting things into that environment. You could put like some smoke or clouds or whatever, and you can actually really make your model more robust. So that's kind of the idea. That was the POC that we did that I thought was a lot of fun. And we got to kind of demo it around to different areas and show, like, we would basically take someone in a hard hat and we would scan them in with some pictures, and then we'd create a 3D model of them and train the model and then identify them as like, okay, you're wearing a hard hat and you have this right safety equipment on, so you can enter this construction premises. Was kind of the idea behind that one. But that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it was kind of new technology. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah. I think at some point, like even yesterday, I was watching a video that sort of goes with that. It's a robot that it shows you in real time what the robot is looking and how they're identifying items that are in front of them. But there's so many things that could change. Let's say if you see a pencil and then it breaks, is it a pencil? Like a human can identify these sort of changes pretty easily because that's how the brain works. But a model is being trained under a certain constraint and certain parameters. But and then these changes, I think, where you can actually scan stuff and actually play with it, and it's in different scenarios, is probably a game changer for the whole solution itself.
Yeah, I think it's a lot safer to do the way that you were saying, Levi, and you can create a lot of multiple scenarios to get data in whatever you're doing.
You don't even have to go through it. You can just create these scenarios, and I guess like the more data you have or more experiences you have, the better it can forecast what's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I think one of the good use cases there was like for car accidents. All these cars now have cameras on them. So if you think of Tesla, or they're doing kind of the self-driving, right? The amount of car crashes in terms of the total amount of video footage you have, maybe it's like 0.001% of the time a car crash happens. So that's a limited training set to work off of to predict when car crashes happen. So imagine you took that and you really expanded that data set quite a bit with fake data. Now you have maybe a more robust data set to better suggest where you should drive for like automatic self-driving cars, given that you have a more balanced data set of where things could go wrong. So that's kind of a cool application there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, and talking about Tesla, I saw that this guy started wearing a shirt with the stop sign, and all the autopilot cars will stop because they'll think it's a stop sign. Like,
Yeah.
What about the non-electric cars? They'll just run them straight through. He tries to do that.
It's going to be interesting getting into the self-driving car world, and like how that plays out across, you have people that are driving and self-driving cars at the same time. And I think it's really interesting to think about, like, how does that change?
Yeah.
Do people own, like, car ownership? Are people going to own cars? Is everyone just going to like share these Ubers because it's self-driving? Like, you really need to own your own. I think it could have some pretty wild effects.
Yeah.
And it's all machine learning, right? Like all the scenarios that all these self-driving cars go through, it's all based on modules that they've trained.
Yeah. I think like a really simple one is like they just take an image and they're like, where are the lines? Like, where are the white lines? And then they just say, okay, here are the white lines. The car has, some mechanic of like, okay, if you turn the steering wheel this much, it goes this way. So you're just basically saying, stay in the white lines. That's a super basic one, but obviously they've gotten so much more robust at this point. But I think that was the first iteration.
Yeah, I think
this is probably the important one.
Yeah, a lot of the companies are just using video technology at the moment. But there is another way to gather data, but I can't remember what it was.
Is it LiDAR? Like all the sensors that map the speed of light, like how it travels?
Maybe, yeah.
Because there's different inputs, but I think the most common one will be images or video.
Yeah, video. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what was the other project that you were gonna talk about?
Oh, yeah. So that one, you might find this interesting, Nick. It's a tennis racket recommender. So basically what it does, so they, I don't know if you're familiar with tennis, you would know, but if you're not, it might be kind of, this obscure fact or whatever, but they started using automated line callings in tennis. So they don't really have so much, if you go on most of the tours, they don't have someone physically calling the ball in or out. They have a series of cameras around the court. And what they do is they use machine learning or some sort of physics model to approximate where the ball is going to land. And it's quite accurate. Up to like 1 millimeter, I think, is how accurate it is on most systems. Wow. But what we use this system, we have a system here at Tennis Australia where we can go out and play on a court and track basically where the ball's landed, where the person's at. And what we do is we work to create this kind of test where you have 10 different rackets that are all blacked out. So you have no idea what racket you're using. And the idea is someone's coming in there and they want a new racket, but they're not sure exactly what racket they want. And there's a lot of bias in tennis. Like, you might have been with the same brand for years, and so you don't want to switch. You're going to get like the newer model of your racket. So there's a lot of loyalty there. So the idea is we're going to make it so you can't tell what racket you're using. And then we're going to track all the balls. And in the test, basically, we have a setup where it's like, hey, you're trying to hit this target. And so you feed all these balls in, and they try to hit the target. And then you switch rackets, and you go through maybe like 8 rackets. And it's quite intense test because you have to do 8 rackets and all these different shots. But at the end, what you do is you measure like the accuracy, the power, and the spin of what racket belongs to which, right? So you get this report that we created, and that basically shows like, okay, here's the recommendation given you want more power, you want more spin. So it's kind of a cool application of machine learning in that like ball and player tracking, and then kind of a prediction of what would be your best racket given the speed of the ball coming off your racket and stuff like that. So it was pretty fun to work on.
I will definitely use that. Like even like because I've been playing tennis, and some of my friends know that I've been playing for so long. The ones that start getting into the sport, they always come to me asking me like, what sort of racket I should get, and I always say, from my experience, I use this brand, this brand, this brand, and but I always say like you have to try it. Like there's no way I could tell you which one is the best because that will be my recommendation for myself,
Hmm.
but it might not be for you. And it's when you're a beginner, normally you don't know that. And I think the more you try rackets, it's almost like the more you drink beer, you know which one is the one that you like.
I was thinking as well, like just it's so truly by the bias that people have towards tennis rackets. Like if I'm a fan of Djokovic, I'm probably gonna choose the racket that or the brand that he plays with. And even if I went through the machine learning, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm still gonna get Djokovic's racket because I want to be like him.
Don't worry about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I want that.
No, it's 100%. I went through the recommendation system that I built myself, and it recommended me like there's like these rackets that are like the pro stock versions, and everyone wants to be more on the pro, like closer to the pro versions than the non one. And it recommended me this kind of lighter racket that is kind of seen as like not a real racket, not a real racket, but it just has different specs. And I was like, ah, shoot, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I need this light version. And it did feel really good. I probably would have bought it had I not I already owned a bunch of rackets, but it was a little eye opening, like my bias towards things.
Did you go back to the drawing board? You're like, I need to retrain this so that I can get the right racket that I want.
No, I stand by the recommendation.
That's very good.
That's pretty good. Like pretty interesting. And you can see like even as not just tennis in any single sport. Like normally, when you have to choose the right equipment, it's a whole research that you gotta go through, and
Mhm.
just to get to that point where you decide what you're gonna get.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And then like that model that you created can be used in a lot of different sports as well, or other stuff like testing.
Yeah. Yeah, any
That's
sort of
cool.
or any sort of like equipment testing, you could think that
Yeah.
there'd be a lot of like, similarities. I don't know if you're playing cricket or baseball or basketball, like if you're tracking the player, then it just becomes the change in the
object.
calculation of
Yeah.
exactly. Like what are you
I was-
measuring that you want to see?
Yeah, I was thinking like because I'm a chef, I was thinking knives. Like what knives might be the most efficient knife to use for
Oh,
cutting
Yeah.
and
Good one.
slicing in that. So that's a cool
Yeah.
concept.
Oh, that's really good because normally you think like not be non-chef. Like you normally you hear like, oh, Japanese steel is the best. That's from what I
Yeah.
heard. And how do you know if you are not a chef that are using different knives, which is the racket in this case? How do you
Exactly.
know which is the best knife for you?
For you, yeah.
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 And that's just I was just thinking about that. Like, man, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Levi, have
I'm sure,
another
yeah,
project.
because like there's like in the knife, there's probably something like balance, like how heavy do you want it to
Yeah,
be?
the handle, the weight, the shape,
Yeah.
different tasks. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's vegetables, meat, all the different.
Tracy, save your idea for Shark Tanks. Come on.
Oh my god! You heard it here first, just in case you guys didn't think about that. It's inspired by Levi's tennis model. Yeah, because you can go like I'm sure tennis rackets are expensive, but knives are very expensive as well. And obviously, if you go to like Japan, Germany, all these other places, they make really good knives. And the more, I would say, like how the knife is created, the more expensive it is as well. Like, just like pro, like you have pro rackets. In that sense, they have pro knives as well.
Probably like materials and things they use, the type of steel, all that goes into it.
Same, man. God damn.
Yeah. Yeah, you see
Yeah.
the similarities there.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
materials in pro rackets, I'm sure that they're more expensive
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's sort of things like normally you see all the technology that they use, but you don't actually understand what it exactly is or what it means. Like, let's say rackets use graphene, and I know that fact because every time I see graphene, but I'm not sure if graphene is better. Let's say to what's the other carbon
Carbon
fiber,
fiber.
carbon fiber. So in my mind, is it a mix of different materials or what's best? It's sort of that. But yeah, the analogy is there.
Yeah.
And then also the on your bio on we did a bit of stalking here. So on your bio you said
Research.
research. Sorry,
Research.
I used the wrong term. On your bio you said that you enjoy ML ops. Wanted to ask what exactly means ML ops, and
Mhm.
how do you use, like, is it a process?
Mhm.
If you can
Yeah,
explain.
yeah. ML ops is really like I think, yeah, taking that local model and then productionalizing it and putting it to the cloud. But there's so many steps that go into that it's become a huge job market for people because ML is so hot, but a lot of times companies don't really understand how to put that to like a user. Like, how do we created this great model, but how do we actually use it? And so there's a lot of good research articles that actually talk about the amount of code that is um, in percentage wise, like what is actually the ML code. And usually the ML code represents maybe like 10% of the application or even less. And
Mm,
probably 90% of the code is actually on, okay, how do you ingest the data? How do you transform it? How do you then put it to the model? Okay, giving you the outputs of the model, how do you deploy like a cloud-based solution out there, and how do you monitor that cloud-based solution is working? If you have a new model that comes up, right, because consumer habits change, you need to update that old model. So how do you store your models? How do you then promote models that are doing better and then demote models that are doing worse? So
Yeah.
sometimes they even have these competitions, right? Like, okay, if let's say Amazon has like a product reel, right? They might say, oh, give 50% of the users recommendations coming from this model, and give 50% of the users recommendations coming from another competing model. And basically, whichever one gets the most clicks, it will actually start promoting that model more. And it will say,
Mhm.
okay, more people are actually like getting good actions, quote unquote, from our model. So we're going to start promoting that more heavily. And so now then it's like 90% of the traffic is put to this better performing model. So there's like all sorts of different ways to do it, but all of that takes kind of a lot of code and thought, and like how do you actually create a really good development process. And so that's kind of ML ops, is like the opposite, like making it operational is
Yeah.
basically, I think, what it is. What that's the
mm.
shorthand. It's like, how do you make ML operational for the public?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool, man.
it sounds like a whole framework that has been sort of created for make something that it becomes an idea to a solution to an end product. And you will think like
Yeah.
probably to put in perspective, a model could be on, let's say, on a product will be, let's say, this little ball here. So what all the processes that you need to actually get this on someone's hand so they can use it. So you
Yeah.
you were saying like you will think like probably the 10% that it's actually the building process. All the other stuff it's
Hmm.
actually how to source the materials, how to get the machinery, how to clean the materials so they can be crafted and stuff like that. So just to kind of put it in perspective, and I think that's where most of the work is, right? Like it's on
Hmm.
basically making the data workable for your specific solution.
Yeah. User friendly.
Yeah, that's a great, you like blended that into a supply chain kind of
Oh,
point of view, which was very, very good. I thought, yeah, no, it's true. It's like the pipeline. If you're creating a product, how do you not just once you have all the pieces there, create it, but then how do you source those pieces, and then how are you going to ship that product to a consumer? Yeah, that's a really good analogy.
That's probably because I'm more on the supply chain.
Yeah.
Oh, my
It
understanding.
didn't just come to him. He's he's studying this stuff.
But at
So we
at
had
some point, it's easier for me to digest other information when I create analogies with I normally understand. That's the
Yeah.
way I sort of do it.
Yeah.
so we had the chef tie-in on the last one. We had the supply tie-in on this one. Now we're looking at Noakas. We're thinking, what's the tie-in gonna be?
I'm just here for the comedic relief. Pick on Nick. How many tennis lessons is it going to take for him to beat you? Can we write a machine language around that?
Not many. Probably another match. Probably I'll lose.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting, and I will also wanted to ask, like, what is the things in general from the ML ops, or not necessarily ML ops, but on your job as a machine learning engineer that you hate and love the most?
Honestly, I hate cleaning data. It's probably the worst thing. It's just because it's like it could be in any sort of state. I guess what I'll say is I really dislike inheriting someone else's code, because
Ooh, yeah.
obviously, like, my code's not the best either, but you just have this kind of feeling when you're looking through someone else's code. You're like, why would they do it like this? This is the worst.
Oh my god.
And no, honestly. And you get on your high horse, and you're like, oh, I would never write it like this. But you probably would too. But looking at someone else's code is tough, especially when it's like generating data, and then you see how like the data is structured on the outside and it doesn't really quite work. And so I think that part can be tedious, and I'm more interested in like, oh, I want to build a product. I want to build, and maybe that's the ML ops side of me. Like, I want to build a product for people to use. I don't really want to spend my time cleaning data. So that's probably for me where I have dislikes.
Okay. Yeah.
Monotonous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the part that you love? Like, what's the part that you're probably out of the whole process? Is it seeing the end product at some point?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love like kind of perfecting a product, which is probably my weakness, is that I always want to spend more time than I really have to make something perfect. And so when it gets close to that, I love that feeling of like, oh, this is working, and then having someone use it and it's like they really enjoyed it and it solves a problem for them. I love that aspect. And I think like the tennis recommender for me was kind of like that, where it was we made this system that it existed before I got here, but it existed in this kind of manual process that it took 2 or 3 days to build the report. And we kind of made it so it's just like an API call, basically. It's like 3 or 4 seconds, you'd get the results back. And so being able to do that, I think, I guess maybe to dive down further, it's like building something that anyone can use. Not like, oh, this one person from the company can use it, but it's like this could be a scalable solution that basically anybody could interact with. I love that part about it.
Yeah, so it's like that saying that good is the enemy of great. Like, you could have a good system, like they already had one with the tennis rackets, but you made a great product that actually it's more efficient and way less cumbersome and better for the user.
Yeah, not to toot my horn. I just probably spent a little more time on it. But yeah, I do enjoy making that kind of stuff.
Because if you think about it, like going from 2 to 3 days of a report into a matter of seconds, like that, from a business perspective, like that makes it workable. Like not just putting outside everything of the price and the time that you put on that, but someone that is using a recommendation on the website, for instance, they're not gonna wait 3 days to let them know which record they should get. They just want to know, like,
Yeah.
okay, if I want
Hmm.
power, which one will come for me, or which one will be the best,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, yeah, it's sometimes those people think that economical reason sometimes is just money, but time is also a very important factor when it comes to deploying solutions. So I was like, great
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I have to say, there's a lot of credit there. Like building the initial system is always difficult, and so it's much easier to iterate off of something that's there for sure
Mm,
than
yeah.
than starting from scratch. So I won't take away anything from the people that
Yeah.
built the original one.
No, Levi, you're on the
Yeah.
podcast. You're talking. You take all the credit. It's like you just put like the finished sticker on the end. You're like, I made that.
Trademark.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
I think
okay.
that.
So
Yeah, sorry, go.
I was just gonna ask, sort of like before we wrap up, for the gamers out in our audience there, what sort of video games do you play?
Yeah, so I recently started getting into Baldur's Gate 3, so playing that with my brothers, which has been a lot of fun. At the beginning, it was rough because, like, basically everyone was doing different conversations at the same time. Like, you're overlapping. It's no one knew exactly what was going on in the story. But now we've settled down and we're better teammates to each other. So Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge one for me. Also kind of a random one, but Age of Empires 2.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
an old
Old
it's an
school.
old game, but it's still got a
It's
pretty
so good,
competitive.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that play it. And I usually get wrecked on there within the first 5 minutes. I'm trying to get better and not come in last, but
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet. So.
So are you playing the last one, or is it the OGs?
Yeah, so I think the last one might be the fourth one, and so I'm playing
Yeah.
the second one, which you could
Okay, so
probably
you're
play on
playing.
a 1990s computer or something.
Yeah. I remember playing that on my Windows XP. And
Yeah.
and my mate used to have two PCs on his place. So one will be on his brother's and one on his room, and I'll jump on LAN and we'll play just like a local cop or stuff like that. And
Yeah,
it was so good.
it's so fun. I don't know what it is.
I just remember playing that game and just using the cheats. Like the cheats for me were really fun. You get like a little baby on a scooter with a laser beam.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
Those cheats are insane.
yeah, you used to have like your cheat code with all the stuff, and because like in GTA,
Yes.
let's say you have a piece of paper where you just store
Yeah.
all of those. Or Age of Empire was more like a long code because I never used cheat codes on that game.
Oh, I use them all the time. Yeah, they're good.
They're good, brother.
One of them
I'm
was
pretty-
like Big Daddy, right? Or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
like this car.
Yeah. But that was like almost like Kit from Knight Rider, which just like shot rockets and devastated communities.
I would like start out playing fair, and then like somebody would be decimating me, and I'm like, all right, time to get some revenge. Where's Big Daddy?
Daddy, or I think the baby one was like Baby Pow or something.
Yeah.
It was like these little babies running around with like shotgun lasers or something.
That's so random.
So Levi, do you know any examples of how machine learning can be used in gaming? Like I'm sure there's probably a few cases where it could be used.
Yeah, I think one that I don't know where they're at with, but you imagine you could create these kind of agents, these large language model agents, and so every player you interact with is actually coming up with dynamic responses based on like
Yes.
maybe your user input. I think that would be so cool. Like that's where I'd love to see it go, is just be like in these open worlds where everyone, is kind of their own chat GPT model and they've been given a standard framework of like you're a good person and this is how you should react, and then it opens it up to all these dynamic situations. Like, could you start a cult and like convince people to join your little army? And like, I just think it could be really dynamic in terms of what you could do. So I'd love to see that go into video games in the future. That's for me kind of like where I'd like to go. They have I know they have different like systems in place right now, like where you could like in Overwatch, for example. I used to play quite a bit of Overwatch, and they had these like systems that you could overlay that would basically give you recommendations of like who you should pick based on the opponents on the other team. And that's a pretty simple problem. Like usually even you have an intuition if you've played long enough of what the counters are. But then they started doing this thing where they were tracking actually the kills. So like let's say Winston killed this other player, like a mini diva or something. They would say like, oh, this person's actually they're like, this person's actually really needing to get countered. So you need to pick this person because it can be a little dynamic. So there was like overlaying kind of the CV model onto your Overwatch Overwatch screen, and then getting recommendations on who you should pick based on the other team's composition. So
that's crazy.
I mean, that's pretty cool stuff too.
Yeah.
I think it's illegal though. not allowed.
That's what I was. That's what I was thinking. I was like, fuck. I like me and Noakas as well. Played a lot of Overwatch, and I was like, I've never seen that. But that's such a cool idea.
That's probably why if you go on there as a casual player, you just get wrecked.
Exactly.
all these guys are hard countering you.
I just downloaded this game. What? Oh, I'm just like uninstalling it.
Going back to your first example of them using a large language model in a video game, they actually do have that in Skyrim, the VR version. And I've seen a video where there's like a king, and then the player is there, and the king has like his like lieutenant, and you're just in there, and you've completed a quest, and the guy convinces the king that his lieutenant had like killed a whole bunch of people, which he hadn't done, and stole all this money, and then like got the king to execute him.
Okay.
Yeah, all based off the lie that he told.
Based on his charisma level.
Yeah.
Charisma level, yeah.
Yeah.
Fallout fans.
It was interesting because at the start, the king was actually defending his lieutenant, and then like the more lies he fed him, then like the more he believed him, and then he's like, "Yep, get rid of him."
Off with his head.
What an interesting way to interact, and it's like you could see them starting to like simulate real world interactions. Like
that'll be great.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like that, like NPC, like creating NPCs like that, and then putting it into like if you were to go into VR or the metaverse, that's where we want to be, guys. In that crazy world.
That's next.
The Ready Player One.
Yeah, Ready Player One, where you can converse.
It'd be so hard to distinguish who's an actual person versus an NPC. And imagine you have this world of NPCs and real players, and you really don't know like who's who, and you're just trying to. I think we're gonna see that. We're gonna see that soon.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. In one of the old episodes, we talk about more of how AI in general will change our perspective of knowing if something is real or not. And like people, sometimes I talk with my dad, and like they're a bit skeptic about stuff like this. So until they actually start realizing that what they're looking on the news is not actually real, and they said, "Oh, okay, it sort of makes sense now." And I say yes, because like if you don't actually understand what's happening with all this technology, at some point you fall behind, and you start believing everything that you see is real. That's basically it.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you how do you counteract that with like the fake news farms that are out there that are just basically trolling different people or creating content that's malicious? It's a huge problem to solve, and I don't think that they've really solved it. And there's like a lot of open source models that are coming out now, and like Meta's releasing them, and so
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
they're releasing them, and maybe it's a good idea to allow people to interact with them like freely, but at the same time, how do you control like abuse of those types of really powerful models? Like,
Hmm.
I don't have an answer for that, but it's something that
Yeah.
I think we
No.
got to think about.
Yeah. No.
Definitely.
It's now on stepping into the future. Like the last segment that we wanted to have a chat a bit. It's more like, what do you think? These old technologies that we sort of covered before, like digital twins, image recognition, VR, how those all these technologies at some point will tie up with machine learning for your job itself. How do you think? Which of them you're probably more excited about?
I think LLMs are they're just too cool right now. Like
Mm,
there's so
Yeah.
much that you can do with them. They're so dynamic. They seem to just be getting better and better. So for me, it seems like computer vision, while it's really cool, it kind of had this cap on it in terms of what you could do with it, and at least tennis related.
mhm,
I'm sure there's tons of medical applications for like cancer detecting technologies that are implemented and maybe could be even better. But yeah, for me, I think LLMs is a really cool place to start in tennis because they haven't really been introduced to the tennis world all that much or at
Yeah.
all, I don't think.
Mm.
Um, so something that we're hoping to bring at this next AO is actually like, let's say we have all this data around a player and you have live commentating that's happening on the court. Um, could you create an ML model for each court that you can interact with and figure out like what's going on in terms of this player's speed? Like, how quickly is he moving compared to his historical average, or how many forehands did he hit? What's his serve placement? And you're interacting with kind of a chat bot. So if you're watching it, you could ask these questions that, sometimes they'll show stats on the screen or the broadcast of different sports. But imagine that you could take that and basically you could find out any stat that you want about what's going on
mhm,
and like confirm if your
Mm.
intuition's correct on some of these stats. And I think that I don't think we'll get to that point where it's so clean, but I'm trying to get us to a point where we can have some of this data interacting with like a LLM that you could
mhm.
say ask different questions around what's going on in the court. And they started actually tracking limbs. So like at any point in the match, you could
Injuries.
identify where like their wrist is or their earlobes are. Anything. You could map out the entire skeleton of their body on the court as they
Wow.
play. And
That
so you
that
imagine
takes think
taking.
about it. Think about it. That potential tool. Imagine like people are betting. Like they could technically know answers straight away on the stops, and they could predict better what the outcome will be.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Statistics side of things, like for gamblers, they could tell who's going to win based off what's coming
Yeah.
in.
Forecast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
forecast still. Like I'm not like you still need to make the call on whether who's gonna win. But having all these stats, you're giving me more tools to actually make a more informed decision, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's probably always the risk there. At Tennis Australia, we were, obviously like banned from gambling or engaging in any sort of gambling activities, but there's always the risk there of like stats that you're going to produce are going to somehow influence like
More
gambling.
of
But
the
Mm.
yeah, I think maybe we'll be okay. We already make a win predictor, so we predict who's going to win. So I don't think you could get. I don't think you could get worse than that in terms of closeness to gambling.
Yeah.
With regards to LLMs and tennis, I don't know if this was the AO, but I know I saw somewhere that they were using AI commentary for like some of the matches. That they didn't have enough commentators for every single court, so they were using AI to comment on like do a running commentary on some of the matches. I can't remember if that was Australian Open or one of the
Yeah,
other.
it was the AO, I think, because I was looking at the matches that were happening at the same time, and they had a few of them with AI.
Like the same commentators, but the one was like an AI or something.
Yeah, like basically all the courts that are main courts, they all recorded, but there's so many commentators that normally cover the most important matches, and then you have the first couple of rounds where there was AI commentary on each of them. So yeah, I think it was AO,
Yeah.
pretty sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I've not heard of that. It could be there's a lot of different teams out there at the AO, but I haven't seen that yet. But honestly, that's where we're trying to get. Not exactly. We want to basically enable the commentators to be able to have more content at their fingertips. But yeah, it's for sure when there's like the beginning rounds and there's just so many players out there and you don't have enough staff, like it's a great solution to be able to just deploy it. I think it's a little scary for the commentators though. It's like,
Yeah.
Am I gonna
if you can do
replace?
this,
Yeah.
exactly.
I guess
and they get paid well to do that. So it's cost savings.
For some, the example here is there's a video game called The Finals. It's a competitive shooter, and there's it's run like a game show, and there's running commentary on it. And what the developers actually did to prototype the different scenarios really quickly is they got AI to generate a whole bunch. They got the language model to learn the voice actors' voices, and then they ran that and then did all these different scenarios. And then a lot of that stuff made it to the final game as well. And they were saying the efficiency, because like they would have to book in a voice actor, get them to say all the lines. They might not get them correct every time. Whereas if they got AI to do it, they could do it whenever they wanted, like straight away.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a moral thing behind it as well. You know, is that right? And what rights does the voice actors have as well, and how they can control that, how it's used?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What
very
they can
interesting.
say and what they can't. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And because I guess for voice actors, their voice is their brand. So if you've got them saying something, completely random or something that they don't believe in, then that's the moral thing there too.
Yeah. That's actually something that in this section I like, because in general the podcast itself, what we wanted to sort of cover is information that you might heard about it, but how is that going to affect the normal consumer, the normal people that are out there? So in terms of, I'll say like a TV host, they should be looking now at the moment how to put their image, how to put their voice in an avatar that they can control. Because then, if they get out of the game, or if someone else start using that, they start losing money already, or may, if not their job. So I'm not saying that they should straight away jump on something like that, but they should start understanding how they can do if the potential of losing their job in the future. So kind of like a backup.
I could see like jobs being created there where it's like digital avatar contractor, where you basically create like what my avatar will say, and they like have all these rules defined that would feed into some language model or whatever, and then like they manage all of that content and those rules of what they can say. And you can imagine like you're branded with Coke, then you can't be branded with Pepsi. You know, you can't say anything that's going to challenge that relationship and stuff like that. It's just going to get really different, I think. Yeah.
Change is scary. But good.
Yeah.
But good. Definitely.
I think that sort of cover the three main sections that we have today. Only we have to say probably a big thank you to Levi to be with us on the podcast. We really enjoy to have insights about people's jobs and what they normally also like, because it's the stuff that you normally might deal with on your daily basis. Like we say, you use YouTube, you use Netflix, and all these technologies are out there, but not we normally don't understand them. So thank you for giving us a great insight. We all appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
thank you guys. This was so fun to be on. I really enjoyed it. Love that you guys do this. It's great to have that creative outlet, and so I think you guys found a really good niche here of tying gaming and ML together. Seeing where that's going and discussing these ideas, it's a lot of fun. So thanks for having me again.
No problem. Thank you, Levi. Special thanks to Levi for coming on the podcast today and joining us and giving us some really great insights on machine learning. We covered a bunch of topics about him coming over from the US, how he got involved with his current work, and we explored topics about how he uses machine learning in his day-to-day and gave us a lot of really good insights. We also tied that into gaming as well, which was really interesting. And then we discussed how machine learning could be used in the future with different technologies, with large language models. It's all really, really interesting stuff. So if you guys like this content, please follow, like, subscribe. All of our socials will be in the description, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks.